Hello and welcome back to another episode of Barely Qualified, a Formula One podcast, and the silly season just keeps getting crazier and crazier. We are your hosts. My name's Channing Apodaca. The man across the screen, as always, is Brandon Wood.
Welcome.
Brandon, another shoe has dropped.
Oof, this is a big one too.
Yeah, so the rumors have been swirling for quite some time and heating up more so as of late, and it was finally announced today. Red Bull Racing, Oracle Red Bull Racing, I should say, their proper title, has officially announced that as of this morning, May the 1st, year of our Lord, 2024, Adrian Newey, Chief Technical Officer of Red Bull Racing, has officially slated to resign his post.
Yes. This has kind of been a rumor going around for a little bit. I don't know, maybe a couple weeks now. One of the big questions, though, was, should he leave Red Bull? What would his future bring? If he's to go to another team with his contract, potentially he wouldn't be able to have any effect on the car for whatever team he goes to until potentially 2027. This could be a pretty big move.
I mean, he's been with the team for a long time, and I believe he's had multiple roles with that team. If not with that team, he's had multiple roles in F1 as not just a designer and CTO, but as an aerodynamicist, as a race engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Just about everything outside of like a team principal this guy's done. He is the benchmark for what a good race car in the modern era should look like. Literally, he is the GOAT. He's probably the hottest commodity, if not the hottest, outside of Max Verstappen in Formula One. So should he choose to go to another team, that team just got a blue chip.
Yeah, I mean, he had a ton of success previously at McLaren. When he joined the Red Bull in 2006, they were, just a simple midfield team. Over that stint, he was able to bring home 7 championships, or 6 constructors championships, 7 drivers championships. So has obviously given a huge impact to the team. He's seen by many in the paddock as a true creative genius. So what kind of impact is this going to have on Red Bull? It could be a lot of things, right? You could see mass exodus of other personnel just going with the changing tide. You could see Max now potentially looking to make an exit somewhere. This could also maybe not have that big of an effect. Teams like Mercedes have experienced this in the past where in the middle of them experiencing a bunch of success, they have chief technical people leaving like James Allison, and they were able to, survive that and continue to be winning championships and winning races. So it's a big question what's going to come from this.
I think the question is this the first domino in a long line of dominoes to fall that could be the ultimate downfall of the current era of Red Bull Racing and their dominance? I have to ask you a question, though, because I'm looking at the announcement, and this is the official Red Bull Racing announcement, and they say that Adrian Newey's not going to leave until the first quarter of 2025. But you're saying that he's leaving effective immediately.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the team announcement on their Twitter says, the team announces that Chief Technical Officer Adrian Newey will leave Red Bull Technology Group in the first quarter of 2025, which means that with his, what is it called, the gardening leave?
Yeah.
That window, I don't know the exact specifications of this bylaw, but I imagine that would leave him entering, or like with a window of time to enter a new team, not till as far as 2028.
Yeah. But there are, from what I've heard, there could also be, just certain things with his contract where, with the way he leaves, like him leaving for just as a like reputational kind of thing could be, could allow him to join a team quickly,
right away. Interesting. They also say that he's going to be he's going to be focusing on Red Bull's hypercar concept. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, when he
That
leaves.
is
So you have
interesting.
to
I mean,
read
that's
the
something
official
that
team announcement. It says the engineering supremo, which that's a weird term to use in your official tweet. The engineering
yeah.
supremo will step back from Formula One design duties to focus on final development and delivery of Red Bull's first hypercar, the hugely anticipated RB17.
Yeah, and I know that's a project he's been working on for a while, so that's probably just him focusing on that just to get it finished before he leaves and goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which brings the next question, right? Like, what is he doing next? Is he's going to be 68? Does he just retire, or does he continue to search for some competition in going to another team, right? So
Yeah.
he's got a few options. The big one that we've been hearing is Ferrari, and that Ferrari have offered him a deal. We've heard him say personally in the past that Ferrari would be one of those places that
Yeah.
he feel would be on his bucket list, as well as working with Lewis Hamilton and also Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
So going to Ferrari would knock two of those off his bucket list. So that's a good option. There's also the Aston Martin question, right? Like, they've apparently been have offered him a large amount of money.
Yeah.
There's something at play here, right? So Adrian currently lives in England, right? If he was to sign with Ferrari, there's the potential they would have to move to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Aston Martin has a brand new shiny facility that's second to none. It's in the UK. Would be a little bit easier for him. You got Fernando Alonso there. So Aston Martin could be a good move for him as well. So not to forget that with Mercedes looking to sign one Max Verstappen, nabbing Adrian Newey could be a big pull in that direction for them. So I think there's a lot in the works here, and all three, I think, could be very interesting.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest move in Formula One. Like, this is the biggest shakeup that's going to change the landscape of Formula One's foreseeable future that we've seen so far. So we've seen a lot of shit go on this silly season. This is probably the biggest move. Would you agree with that?
I mean, maybe Lewis leaving Mercedes to go for Ferrari.
But in terms of like the ripple effect, the effect that it has on the entire grid.
Yeah, I mean,
the potential for it. I think this has to outshine everything.
Yeah, because with Adrian leaving Red Bull, it could cause, like we said, a huge ripple effect of other personnel to leave, and therein like putting Red Bull in an even tougher position, right? Like, if they were just to lose Adrian, like, how you could question, okay, like, how much does one person affect the whole performance of the car, the whole organization, right? Like, there's a lot to be said about his creative force and being able to give a good direction for development and stuff like that. But who's to say they can't pull off some of the same things with someone who maybe is not quite as talented or it has the same appeal that Adrian does. But
sure, I mean, you could say that about all three other teams, though. Like, I mean, everybody's. Sure. I think the big question is Adrian Newey going to go to Ferrari because of his past comments about wanting to work with Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton? Who's to say that Ferrari wants him? I mean, given the chance to get an Adrian Newey is like given the chance to get a Max Verstappen, you take it. But they're also on a very, very good trajectory right now. So want or need, who knows if he even goes there, They may not even need him. Like you said, they could use the design team that they have right now. And then a team like Mercedes or Aston Martin, I think, could use him more than Ferrari. And if they're willing to throw money at him, I see that being a little bit more of a likely place for him to go is to one of those two teams. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got to look at what Adrian really is looking for, right? I mean, he's like you said, the emotional aspect of working for Ferrari would be a big thing for him, but also maybe just the challenge of working with a team like Aston Martin could
Yeah.
be a bigger draw for him. So
Yeah, and
we shall see.
having a designer like Adrian Newey on your team is sort of stapling your team as a permanent fixture on the grid, whereas Aston Martin's kind of been like a little bit of like the new kid on the block, a 3-time over rebrand of a team, 3 or 4 actually, and looking to cement themselves as a works team and all that. Bringing in an Adrian Newey could really like cement the legitimacy of that team.
Yeah, this hypothetical is making my brain spin a little bit thinking about him going to Aston Martin because, he said he's wanted to work with Alonso, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you look at like competitiveness, their second driver being Lance Stroll. Does if Newey coming into the fold, does that maybe open up an opportunity for Lawrence to say, hey, Lance,
we have to do this now.
This is, we've been all for you, supporting family, all this up until now.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even
business decision. We gotta get a second driver in there that's actually gonna bring home some points here. And looking at the driver market, you got one Carlos Sainz sitting there in waiting. You get somebody like Newey coming into the fold. It makes it very interesting for someone like Carlos, maybe,
I mean, let's
take
even
a little bit of a pay cut to come into this situation, maybe a little bit more of a sure shot than something like Audi for him. So
yeah, let's sweeten that pot even more because both Adrian Newey and Max Verstappen have a clause in their contract that if one of them leaves, the other has the option to do so, right? I believe that's like the loose end of how that contract works. Let's say, I mean, it's not in the contract that one has to follow the other. They can go their separate ways and go where they want. It's just an out if the other should leave. What if Max Verstappen decides to follow Adrian Newey to Aston Martin? They have to clear that seat out. And I don't think, I mean, either way, whether it's Max Verstappen or Carlos Sainz, if they get Adrian Newey, I don't even think it's a Lawrence Stroll decision. We've talked about this before. I think it's a board of directors at Aston Martin have to veto or reverse veto, however that works, have to just go to Lawrence and say, this, we need to outvoice you right here, and this needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at how much Lawrence has invested in the team. It could also be a good opportunity for him to exit, Cash
for
out.
Lawrence to exit? Shit.
Or he gets Adrian to sign, valuation goes up a bunch with that, and then good opportunity for him to cash out, take Lance with him, maybe even I don't know, go into some other type of racing series. I don't know, but
or how about this for a sexy scenario? What if there's an 11th team waiting on the outskirts who's made their bid and has been approved by the FIA for a spot on the grid, but Formula One heads haven't approved them yet? What if they were to sign an Adrian Newey?
In the beginning of Adrian's career, he was a race engineer for Andretti.
I know. In IndyCar, right?
Yeah, it could be a huge connection getting relinked right there. So there's a lot of plays. So
I mean, if they just put him on payroll and they said, look, this guy works for Andretti Global. We got him. Who's to say that we don't have a rightful spot in Formula One? Get fucked. I don't know. There's a lot of this is the biggest ripple effect I think we've seen in a lot of years. And I know we've said that before on this show. We've said it a lot in conversation, but I think this is the biggest one with the amount of what could happen.
Absolutely. Another little bit of news in this off week, we saw Nico Hulkenberg announced as signing with Audi for 2025.
Nico Hulkenberg.
So a couple things. Okay, another little bit of off-week news. We saw it announced that Nico Hulkenberg signs with Audi starting in 2025. This is great news for Nico. He's had a great run since returning back to the grid. This will see him rejoining with Andreas Seidel, who's the CEO of Sauber. They both worked together when Nico won Le Mans in 2015. So a little reunion there. The big question now, what is the team going to be looking for in that second seat? Signing somebody like Nico is kind of like, it kind of leaves it open a little bit in my eyes. They could either go with somebody who's a little bit more top tier than Nico, but they could also go with somebody who's a little bit more junior, potentially a rookie, something like that, coming into next year. So, yeah, what did you make of all this?
First off, big congratulations to Nico. I'm stoked to see him get another drive for the next few years. Like you said, he sat out for a couple of years, and I always thought that was a little it was a little heartbreaking to see him go, but I was so happy to see him come back, even though it was a little bit on the back end, driving for Haas. It's been good to have him back, and I think it's very, very well earned for him to get this Audi drive. Who his teammate is going to be, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious that both Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas should be on the outs. If one of them is going to stay, I think it should be Valtteri Bottas, just based on marketability and
I mean, Valtteri's a solid driver. He's had a rough go the past couple seasons just with his situation within the team, but I think he's still, especially this season, although the results don't necessarily show it for obvious reasons, but Valtteri's been solid.
Yeah, reliability was the word I was looking for. He can do the job. The question is, do you want two drivers who can just get the job done? Because in a way, that's kind of what they got. So if they were to do that, then bringing in Nico Hulkenberg is a little bit of just shuffling the deck chairs and putting a German driver in there because you now have a German manufacturer.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea just to have them choose two consistent drivers, right? Like, especially if this is their first year, under the helm. I think it could be a good idea for them to just getting the development started, just having two drivers that they can really rely on for good data, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's a good start, but I think I would rather see either a Carlos Sainz or a young driver like you had mentioned. But my question to you is, if it is a young driver, who do you think that would be?
Geez, I have no idea. I mean, there's a couple that are, on the brink of entering Formula One, but they're not from within this organization, or they don't really have ties with this organization. So it would have to be maybe somebody that's not necessarily on our radar right now, but is somebody that maybe another team would be looking to sign in the future. So
yeah, because with Nico Hulkenberg going to Audi, the Haas seat becomes available, and it looks like Ollie Behrman is number one candidate to take that. So you kind of got to put him in that seat. And then other than that, who in the Ferrari Academy with who they have ties with do you really put in that seat? Arthur Leclerc? Doubt.
Robert Schwartzman.
Robert Schwartzman's really kind of fallen off. Now. I think he's got IndyCar written all over him. Or Formula E. Yeah, it's kind of hard to place, but there is always the big question mark of, does Carlos Sainz go there prematurely, or does he go to a more competitive team in the interim?
Yeah, I mean, because we've been hearing for a long time that Audi want Carlos, but it seems like now that maybe Carlos is not really sure, and Carlos kind of would rather look for a more competitive option in the short term, especially just with where he is in his career. He's kind of at his peak maybe a little bit right now. So can he really afford to spend 2-3 years at a team that's just starting out, trying to figure things out? Or does he want to be somewhere that's a team that's already in the mix and, fighting for podiums already? So,
yeah, I think Carlos is going to have the pick of the litter of whatever seats are available to him. So if he waits a little bit longer, I wouldn't be shocked. We've also heard rumors that we could hear of a signing as soon as, this coming weekend, Miami, right?
For Carlos, it probably won't hear about it until after, but you never know. You never know.
Moving on, though, we heard one more bit of potentially breaking news as early as Miami. leading into our next segment, that post Miami GP could be the last that we see of Logan Sargeant in the Williams seat.
Oh, I didn't know that it was going to be that soon. I had heard that it was summer break, so that would be closer to around Imola. But
I had heard that it could happen as soon as after his hometown race.
So, all right. So what we're talking about here is the possibility of Andrea Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes phenom, who's in his first year of Formula 2, fast tracked from, what was it, F4?
I don't remember if he did F3 or not.
Yeah, I think he skipped F3. So quickly on the rise. Apparently, Williams has already been petitioning to the FIA to allow him to enter. I guess because he's only 17 right now, he technically would have to get an exemption like Max Verstappen did when he joined from the FIA. I don't know if he has his full super license points yet either, because we're only a few rounds into the F2 season, so there's still a couple things that need to get fleshed out until Kimi Antonelli can make his debut on the grid. But the plan is for him to do it at Williams around the summer break. So that meaning Logan on his way out, going to be his last Grand Prix in the United States potentially.
Yeah. I'm curious too. I haven't seen any announcements of like an FP1 session or anything, like a young driver session for him. But if they're going to try and fast track him to get him those super license points, a la the way they did with Logan Sargeant, I don't know if you remember that from about 2 years ago, how interesting it would be that it's probably going to be Logan Sargeant's own seat.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of feels like, it's already too late for Logan. I mean, it's been we had a lot of doubts about him at the end of last year, whether or not he was going to make it back. And then just to see the first few rounds here of this season not go well at all. I mean, he had to sit out one round just because his teammate crashed his car, and due to the terrible situation the team's in, they didn't have enough parts for his car. So he had to give it up. So,
he literally had to play the most second fiddle you possibly could in Formula One, which is just riding the pine.
Yeah, it'd be a really terrible way to go out, but that's the way a cookie crumbles.
The downward slope of Logan Sargeant has just ramped up fivefold this season, tenfold. Like, he was bad last year, he's been even worse this year. Like, when we thought it couldn't get any worse, it literally every single outing. All you have to do is keep it on track, and he cannot even seem to do that. I think I had mentioned it a podcast or so ago, but I don't think even Nikita Mazepin or I can't even remember his name. I want to say Nick DeVries. Nick from Williams.
Nicholas Latifi.
Nick Latifi. I don't think either one of them even had as many bad outings as he did. Nick Latifi was at least able to keep it on track when he had to, as bad as he was. Logan Sargeant's incapable. I think Logan Sargeant's got a little bit more of that dog in him. He wants to race more than Latifi did. Latifi was constantly 2 to 3 laps down. So I think Sargeant's problem is actually trying to give it everything he's got, but he just doesn't have it.
Yeah, trying a little bit too hard, and it's just spiraling out of control for him. So hate to see it, but them's the breaks.
Yeah. Do you have anything else before I give you a little bit of breaking news?
No.
All right.
Let me hear it.
So, having to do with what we were talking about in this very podcast, a little bit of breaking news within the last hour. One, Adrian Newey has ruled out any interest in going to Aston Martin.
Ooh.
Yeah, this comes from Autosport's Twitter. And it says Ferrari does remain an option. With it suggested that team principal Fred Vasseur met privately with the famed designer on Tuesday. So they had a little bit of a meeting yesterday. It doesn't look like any negotiations are going on. But if this is true, then everything we just said about Adrian Newey and the upward trajectory of Aston Martin is completely out the window. That, and from Fastest Pit Stop's Twitter account, 12 members of the U.S. Congress have written a letter to F1 owners Liberty Media demanding justification for rejecting Andretti Global's bid into F1 in 2026. That means the U.S. government is getting involved.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to read which Congress members it is because I don't want to
get mad.
I don't want to get mad or open up any sort of a cesspool. But that is, I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to look into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Miami.
My jammy.
Coming back. This is what, year 3?
Yeah, this is their 3rd year. This weekend is a sprint weekend.
Back
so
back,
if you hate this track, like a lot of people, you get more and more of it.
So last year, Miami, I think similar place in the schedule was last year. Last year, it's a huge turning point in the season. We saw coming into Miami, it was Max Verstappen with 2 wins, and we had Checo Perez with 2 wins.
Mm-hmm. And I think Checo was 1 or 2 points away from leading the world championship.
Absolutely. And qualifying, Max had a little bit of a rough go in his Q3 runs and ended up only qualifying 9th with Checo Perez on pole. And when it came to the race, we saw Max, at this point we have been questioning, we talked about on our podcast, can Checo challenge for the championship lead? Like, can he give it to Max? And then this Grand Prix, where Max comes from 9th on the grid, comes and passes his teammate and ends up winning, I think really set the tone for the rest of the season. This is kind of where we started to see Checo's season start to unwind as he's grasping at small little setup changes, trying to keep up with Max. And in that, I think he ended up spiraling into that depression of not making it into Q3s for that little stint there in the middle of the season. So
spiraling into a depression.
So could we see a similar turn of tides?
Are you talking about a role reversal? You think the king of the streets is going to make a return here in Miami?
Maybe not, but I don't know if we're going to see as much of a change at the top here, but I'm more thinking about down the rest of the grid, what we could see different coming into this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really looking for or like anticipating too much change. I think like a continued trajectory here is like what I'm sort of looking forward to. Like obviously Max has plateaued, so the rest of the thing is like who catches up to Max up at the top, and then do the middle of the pack teams. Mainly Haas continue to impress. Haas, and then you want to look for, I guess, like, both Aston Martins to have a good weekend, which is, few and far between. Like we were just saying, they're pretty on 2 ends of the spectrum, those 2 guys. Other than that, it's just really about who's going to give us the idea of catching Max.
Yeah, I think, I don't know that Max is necessarily plateaued. I think he's probably still going to find performance through the rest of the season.
You would think, right? You would think. How much further can you go? But yeah, you're probably right. He probably has.
You mentioned Haas. Last year, we saw our boy Kevin Magnussen with the P4 in qualifying. I forget exactly how he managed to make that happen, but it was a pretty incredible weekend for him last year. So I want to see what's going to happen there. Like Checo, Street King, this is going to be his opportunity, I think, to close the gap a little bit to Max. I want to see how he's going to handle that.
Yeah, I think the Street King moniker has kind of gone away. It was a little bit of a, that was like a cute thing a season or 2 ago, but like after last season, I think the 2 races he won last season were traditional tracks, and every street course Max absolutely dominated. So the idea of like king of the streets, I don't know if that exists anymore. We'll stick with the Mexican Minister of Defense. That one's more fun. I mean, like, do I want to see him come and have a great race? Obviously, right? We want to have him have a good race. We want to have both Ferraris have a good race. I'd love to see Lando Norris continue his run of form?
With it being a sprint race this weekend, do we feel like maybe there's another opportunity for some teams to make some mistakes on their setup between sprint and a race?
Oh yeah, I could see the McLarens having a good sprint. That seems to be like where they really shine. If you look just historically, when they won the sprint in Interlagos with Oscar Piastri, they didn't have the greatest race to follow that up. You can look at last weekend when I keep calling Lando Max to start my sentences off. When Lando put it on pole in the sprint and then follow that up with, and yes, slippery conditions and going up against 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton in the first corner. But they tend to fall back in the main race on Sunday after having a great sprint race. So I could see the McLarens falling back. You always got to leave the window open for Ferrari to have a blunder. Who else are you thinking?
I don't know. I'm like, right now, I'm just kind of stuck on the point that last year, this was a pretty solid one-stop race for everybody. So I think with the sprint, we're going to see maybe a little bit of action more so than on Sunday. I have a feeling that Sunday's race is going to be kind of a snoozer. We might see, some conservative strategies, some conservative driving from everybody.
Some conservative people.
A lot of conservative people. So just an effort to preserve the tires, because that's going to be much of what this race is about. Depending on what the weather's going to be like, if it's hot.
I was just going to ask if you've seen the weather report.
Yeah.
They got to be running the 3 hardest compounds, right? It's got to be C4, C5, C6.
Yeah, and then I know last year it was like the Red Bulls started on the hards and then switched to mediums for like the last shorter stint of the race. So it probably won't be that exciting, honestly. Like unless there's some wrench that gets thrown in, I feel like it's going to be just a battle of who can keep their tires the longest. So I think it's going to be this is going to be good for Lando, because he showed us last week or last race in China how good he's able to do that in the McLaren. I think weather kind of helped him a little bit, but I think it could be a good opportunity for him to have another podium finish.
Yeah.
I want to see Charles kind of get some momentum back in his direction. So hopefully see him kind of better Carlos this weekend. So also I want to see Lewis not make any stupid changes to his setup. So
oh wow, you're changing your tone. Now it's Lewis making bad decisions. Interesting.
Well, I mean, he admittedly made the wrong decision last go in China. So
yeah,
and he didn't have a good race here last year. So I want to see a little bit of redemption from him.
Yeah. Here's a little bit of wishful thinking. The last time we were in a warm weather climate, like a true warm weather climate out in Australia, Max Verstappen's rear right brake blew out and overheated. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that trouble coming from the Red Bull car here in the hot and humid weather of Miami, and that would make things very, very, very interesting. Not saying that that's my bold prediction, but I got one. Do you have a bold prediction for this race?
We're going to see some kind of strange wildlife on the track. It could be like a bird or a crocodile, alligator,
or like
possum, something like that. It's going to be something strange happens during one of the sessions.
Some drunk Miami chick, maybe.
China, we had fires, so who knows what we have here.
Yeah. I think that Logan Sargaent is going to red flag at least one session. Whether it be a practice session, a qualifying session, the sprint, or the race, he's going to red flag somewhere, and he's going to solidify his exit from Formula One.
Will Shaq be there?
Shaq will be there.
Okay.
Will Michael Jordan be there?
Ooh, I think that's a good one. That's a good potential.
We'd have to check the NASCAR schedule and see if they race on Sunday. But because he owns that team, there's a good chance that he'll be there. Will Christina Aguilera be there?
Shakira?
Bad Bunny?
Maybe that's what Lewis needs, is Shakira come back into his life.
Did they date?
Well, it was like it wasn't official, but there was like they were seen hanging out last year after this race because I think she was there and they were seen together hanging out afterwards for a couple weeks.
That's
So
true. Who was Lewis dating when he was like in peak Lewis? Like let's say around like the third or fourth world championship. Was that Nicole Sheridan? Was that era?
I don't know. I don't know. I know he dated Rihanna at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something
That
like
you know what?
So,
That feels like that's when that was going on. That's all. What if that's all it takes is for Lewis to just get some pussy?
I mean, you know, I'm sure he doesn't have that big of a problem with it, but you know,
it's got to be like the right.
He does need a muse though. He does need a muse.
Yeah.
So.
Lewis needs to go see Checo's therapist.
I mean, he did turn it around last year, so.
Coolio. All right, is that it?
I think so.
I think so, right? Guys, this has been the Barely Qualified Formula One podcast pre-Miami Grand Prix. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, all that good shit. Our YouTube page. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We also have our Beacons AI. Check that little bad boy out. Click the link. You can drop us questions, comments, concerns, leave a little tip. Anything else, B-Wood?
I think that's good.
I think I rattled that one off pretty clean.
Yeah, it was great. Looking forward to hanging out, watching the race at your place, having some good food, some good hangs. So,
be good. We will see you guys post-race. Peace.